Family. Hold on. So we won't have that wild echo. We back in business. So glad to be back with you. I look a little off. I look a little off, but we're not gonna worry about that. You know, we do most of the show from a different camera. So we'll go on through. So glad to be with you again for another episode of Soul Swami Live. I appreciate your support, your love, your sharing, your vulnerability, and all the good things that make this channel what it is today. Right? So, hold on, I'm gonna get my things together so I can give you my undivided attention, family. Get past that. All right, here we go. We can get this party started. So, what we do here is, well, again, welcome to Soul Swami Live, where we discuss healing in various forms and formats, whether it be through homework, whether it be through connecting to the child in us, like we do with Thursday Night Book Club. Thursday Night Book Club is a spinoff of our Tuesday night show to allow us, again, to connect with the child in us. We try to create this space of people with common interests, common energy, and all working towards the same direction, which is to be the best version of themselves, the most authentic version that they can be. You can catch us every Tuesday and Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Instagram. Generally, at the beginning of every show, we do a little energy work, and this week we are on our throat, right? So the throat is the powerhouse or the central station for your authenticity, your communication, your expressions, and your truth. I appreciate you, pretty black girl. I saw your support earlier on Facebook, so thank you. But again, it is for your authenticity, your communication, your expression, and your truth. If you are into color therapy or light therapy, you want to think light blue. If you are into essential oils or aromatherapy, you want to think chamomile. Well, that's even good if you drink some chamomile, peppermint, even if the food you want to eat, you know what I mean? So good for your throat. Chamomile, peppermint, cypress, bergamot are all very good for your throat. If you are into crystals and gemstones, you want to think turquoise, which I still haven't found. I still haven't found my turquoise ring, so I figured that it did all it was supposed to do for me. Aquamarine is excellent for your throat. Lapis lazuli is excellent for your throat. And blue lace agate, which is what the ring is. Oh, I'm at the wrong camera. Boom. But anyway, so generally at the start of that, we do a little sound therapy. So we do the bowl, we do some breath work, and then we do some visualization. Some affirmations, repeating affirmations, and then we start with the show. So right now, just try to get yourself in a position, get prepared for a great episode as we continue our discussion on we're doing the 12 universal laws, and this time we are on law number 4, which is the law of attraction. And we've been discussing the 7 laws that go with the law of attraction themselves. But as we continue our discussion, try to get yourself prepared for our discussion. If you have some headphones on, this is a great show for headphones. We try not to get too loud, but the bowl does get a little loud sometimes, depending on the energy. And start trying to shift your energy to a space of comfort, contentment, and relaxation by getting rid of the stress of the day. All right. communication, authenticity, and all those good things. Expression must be high because the energy is off the charts. The bowl, I always judge by the loudness of the bowl. I do the same thing, and generally it gets different levels of loudness depending on the energy that we are all moving in together, right? So next we'll do breath work. I think I want to do 4-7-8. Because last time we tried to do 4-7-8, we kind of skipped around, and I guess my spirit wanted to do box breathing, so we switched from 4-7-8 to 4-4-4. If you are unfamiliar with breathing exercise of 4-7-8, that is, you inhale for 4 seconds, you hold your breath for 7 seconds, and you exhale for 8 seconds. It's really a space to try to allow yourself to get, bringing the consciousness how you're breathing. Focus on your breathing. Make sure you're aware of your breathing. Make sure that you're in control of your breathing, because breathing is one of the first things to show us that our energy is off. For example, I am a shallow breather. When I start shallow breathing, I know something is off and I need to pay attention to that. So for the 4-7-8, all you have to do is just listen to the sound of my voice. I will direct you through this, and you focus on your breathing and clearing your energy. Really think about authenticity. Really think about your communication. Really think about your expression, and really think about your truth, right? So on the count of 3, we will start our breathing, our breath work, 4-7-8. 1, 2, 3. Breathe in 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Breathe in 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Last time, family. Breathe in 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release 8, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And while you are there, hey Liberty, so glad to have you. I said you got a blue heart today to match the throat. I guess you probably perfect or right on perfect timing. Right after I did the bowl, because I know your baby girl ain't a friend of the bowl. But as you relax in your energy and you focus on your throat, your authenticity, communication, expression, and truth, I want you to repeat these affirmations after me. These affirmations are some of the energy that we want to that we want to make sure that we incorporate into ourselves. Hey, Shad, I swear I want to call you the nickname we grew up with. I swear I appreciate you. And man, it's always beautiful to see people from childhood really taking care of themselves, doing the things that's necessary so they can be authentic people. And I'm glad that you share pieces of your life with us on social media, because sister, I'm proud of you, for real, for real, for real. And thanks for your support as always. Oh no, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do. I already heard that you don't go by the the message came to me. I already heard that you don't go by the nickname we grew up with. Now, if I see you in person, I might call you that because it's hard for me to not call you that. It's like me and Peanut. Everybody knows Peanut that grew up with me, so I get it. Or Ali, and people still call him Clinton, and even though he don't go by that no more. But anyway, as you're working on your throat energy, again, you think about your authenticity, your communication, your expressing your truth, and we add these affirmations in. Just repeat them after me. I speak and hear truth. I communicate honestly. I live an authentic life. I am fearless and free. And I trust what I have to say. I speak and hear truth. I communicate honestly. I live an authentic life. I'm fearless and free. And I trust what I have to say. All right, family, let's get this show started. Where we at? Side cam. Here we go. All right, so we're gonna chat a little bit as always. We'll continue our discussion. We discussed a lot last week as it relates to the law of attachment, right? Really beginning to understand, not beginning, but diving deeper into our understanding of the power that we do have, our direct connect to the universe, God, and all those things above, our ancestors, all those that came before us to lay the pathway for us. It helps us better understand the power that we have and the influence that our energy has on our everyday life, right? So something I kind of want to share with you all before we get back into that is I mentioned last week that in the men's group, we were posed with a question. And I never really actually thought about it until we had this question. This question was, he gave us certain words, specific words, and asked us, where do we feel these words in our body, right? And I never really thought about a lot of these emotions do stem from different places in our body. We feel them in our body. Some emotions I feel in my feet because I'm about to make that choice with my feet. Some emotions I feel in my head. Some I feel in my heart. Some I feel in my stomach. But it was ironic because we talked about disappointment, and I pointed out to where disappointment, I generally feel it in my shoulders, right? And the way I noticed that I feel disappointment in my shoulders, because the first thing that happens when I feel disappointment is my shoulders go down. And I slouch a little bit like, oh man. So the kid in me shows up immediately when I feel disappointment. And we've talked about reshaping our relationship with these words. So I reshaped my relationship with that word disappointment. And I had the opportunity to work with that immediately after I said I wanted a better relationship with this idea of disappointment. So then the question that he gave us was forgiveness. Where do you feel forgiveness in your body when it's time for that, right? So the first thing that came to my mind is I feel forgiveness on the tip of my tongue, right? It's always like something I need to say, something I want to say, or it's just something where I just feel it on the tip of my tongue. Something needs to be said. And I also said that I recognize that one of my gifts is to receive messages through wind. And I always talk about the breath of life. The breath that we breathe every day carries messages, right? So the words we say, all of that is breath, and that gives us messages and energy. So when it came to this forgiveness, me feeling forgiveness on the tip of my tongue made sense because it's something I have to express. Now, where things got a little murky, or not necessarily murky, but convoluted, is I also feel forgiveness in my shoulders, right? And the thing that happens when it's time for me to forgive is the exact same thing that happens when I'm disappointed, right? So my shoulders go down. And then I had to take a little bit of time and think about why would I respond to forgiveness, something that's supposed to be so good for me or good for others, the same way that I respond to disappointment, right? And then I recognize that that's the space where I need to separate those things, right? Because when I started thinking about my feelings of forgiveness and I was able to recognize why forgiveness was so hard, is because I'm processing these emotions in the same spot, right? So when it was time for me to give forgiveness or feel forgiveness, I'd feel the same energy that I would feel when it came with disappointment. And then I'd feel weakened and I'd feel lesser, right? Well, not necessarily lesser, but I'd feel weakened, right? So then I had to think a little bit harder and dive a little bit deeper on why does forgiveness make me feel weak, right? And what I recognized is the reason why forgiveness sometimes makes me feel weak is because of the vulnerability, right? Vulnerability is one of the major words that we've been working all these last couple of years, along with grace and worthy and safe. But vulnerability is one of the major words that we've been working on over the last couple of years to reshape our relationship with, right? And then I had to recognize that, dang, vulnerability makes me feel weak. Right? But since we've taken these tools and understand and reshaped our relationship now that I'm able to recognize that forgiveness will give me a feeling, I responded to forgiveness the same way I did disappointment because of the vulnerability. Disappointment requires vulnerability because you have to have yourself open to be disappointed. If you're not open, it's hard to be disappointed. You don't have the care. You don't have the concern. You do not have the connection to the outcomes that you would if you're vulnerable. So I recognize that vulnerability was the common theme between the way I processed those two things, right? So once I recognized that, it became a little easier for me to be able to apply the new tools, which we learned that the new tools are the new perspectives, or the new understanding, and the new tools to vulnerability to help me process forgiveness a little bit better, right? And as I recognize all that, and as I began to apply my understanding to the vulnerability of the thing, it became a little easier to shift where I process forgiveness to a different place, right? And where I chose to shift it to, or where it shifted to on its own, was to my heart. Because forgiveness is hard work. Not hard work, but heart work. Heart work. The attraction power of our heart, the magnetism of our heart is very important, right? So I say all this to you all so that you begin to start thinking about, as you're recognizing the relationships that you have with certain words, which is the emotions that these words create. As you recognize that, I do want you to take some time and think about where you're processing these emotions and see if there's some overlap, confusing your spiritual body or your emotional body, and telling them that they're the same thing when they're not, as I did with forgiveness and disappointment. So again, take some time as we think about our words: worthy, loved, safety, right, and free. Those are the words that we worked on together. As we think about that, we want to think about where we process these things and start looking for any overlap that may confuse or help us lose the message that we're supposed to get, right? Okay. So last week, again, we started on the law of attraction. And excuse me, let me get to where we were. All right. So in understanding the law of attraction, the first thing that we talked about is that you have to understand that you attract in your life whatever you consistently think about, feel, or believe. We understand that like attracts like. We went deeper into understanding that how, even though they say opposites attract, the rest of that is it takes a cataclysmic event to break them apart because they shouldn't be together. We wind up seeing that you find positives with positives, you find negatives with negatives, and so forth. So we understand that if we're curious about the life that we're living, we have to go inside and be honest with ourselves, have that truthful conversation, finds our truth to be able to understand why are we attracting this. Hey, Sherry, so glad to have you again. You look beautiful in your picture you posted the other day. I give you a shout out. Okay, then we began to discuss how our thoughts actually become things. So the way that we think winds up becoming our behaviors, and then our behaviors create outcomes. So those thoughts wind up becoming things. So we have to be mindful of our thoughts and the way we think about things. And really, are these thoughts in line with who we really want to be? If we value relationships, how do we actually think and talk about relationships, right? Are those things in alignment? We already talked about when we did quantum mechanics, we talked about embodiment, how we need to embody, not just speak them, but become the living word of these things that we want to attract to our lives and manifest in our lives. We can't just talk about it, but we have to actually be about it. We also discussed that you attract what you are, not just what you want. And that was one of the more difficult ones for me to come across, because I'd attract certain things and I'd look at these things and vehemently say, I'm not like that at all. But was I really being honest with myself? There was something that was resonating in me that made this energy feel like we are kindred energy, because that's why I attracted it. Not only did I attract it, but that's what I accepted. So there was something in me that this relationship was mirroring back and reflecting to me that I needed to understand. We also began to start talking about the science behind it, and this word is going to show up again as we discuss further the law of attraction, but reticular activating system, which simply means your brain filters out information based on what you focus on and what you believe, right? So that's how we wind up finding ourselves in these echo chambers of information. Because of this reticular activating system, our brain in this magnificent power winds up filtering out anything that disproves what we believe, right? We also talked about this idea of self-fulfilling prophecy. As I stated, your beliefs become behaviors and the behaviors become outcomes. So whatever you believe, you behave in ways to support that belief so that you'll get the outcome to reinforce what you initially thought. That is the complete circle right there. So we understand the self-fulfilling prophecy. And then we also talked a little bit about emotional conditioning, which is positive thinking broadens your positive emotions, broadens your thinking and your creativity. Living in a positive energy, thinking positive thoughts, embodying positivity winds up increasing your thinking and your creativity. Conversely, negative thinking, negative emotions constrict your thinking and ability to solve problems. So some of the reasons we can't solve our problems is because we keep functioning in a negative emotions. That is that survival, that is that fear, that is that worry. Those things that are gripping us are the things that are keeping us from solving our problems, right? So then, as I stated, the law of attraction comes with 7 laws of itself. So we began discussing the 7 laws that go with the law of attraction. First one was the law of manifestation. Your thoughts, emotions, beliefs create the energetic blueprint of your life, right? Then we talked a little bit about the law of magnetism, and that is your inner vibrations, the energy that you function on. We understood that everything vibrates at its own frequency that can be measured. And that we also talked about how it corresponds to the external, right? The roots look like the branches, right? So our internal world winds up pulling in matching external experiences, right? Then we started talking about the law of pure intentions, which is important. So this is understanding that manifestations come faster when your intentions are pure. And what does that mean? That means your intentions are not driven by fear. They are not driven by desperation. They are not driven by manipulation like control. Many of us believe that having the control is how we feel safe. But to have that control, we have to have manipulative intentions. I said it to somebody else the other day. For me to be a good supervisor, when I was leading people or when I lead people, the thing I had to be best at is manipulation. Now, again, we understand that these words aren't inherently negative. Our intentions behind them could be negative. So when I became a leader, the first thing I wanted to do to manipulate people is make this an environment that people actually want to be a part of. And even though I had good intentions, the functions and the tools that I was using was still manipulation, right? So when we're talking about the law of pure intentions, we make sure that our manifestations, the things that we want them to come faster when our intentions are pure. And again, that means not driven by fear, desperation, or manipulation, right? Then the last thing we discussed was the law of paradoxical balance. What is that? Essentially what that says is as you desire something, you desire it without clinging to the outcome, not clinging to it, right? Because the wild thing about it is that attachment to the outcome, that attachment to what happens is what creates the resistance, right? So that's many of us not knowing when to fold them, or knowing when to hold them, or knowing when to walk away, or knowing when to run. That is meaning we are functioning out of balance with ourselves because we're clinging so tightly to the outcomes, and we cannot necessarily control the outcomes, right? We can control our inner. So once we start taking these steps, we do our best, but we don't cling to the failures and let them become our identity and define us. We don't do that. All right. So the next law that we are going to discuss is the law of harmony as it relates to the law of attraction. Again, these are still the 7 laws of attraction as they fit into the 12 universal laws, right? So law 4 is the law of attraction. And the 5th of the 7 laws of attraction is the law of harmony. What does that mean? That means that you need to align your energy with the larger universal flow. What does that mean? The easiest way to be able to explain that is thinking about the seasons. or even farmers. There's a time to plant and there's a time to harvest. There's a time to neutralize the land. There's a time for everything. And you align yourself with that. So when it's a time to destroy or a time to plant, you plant those seeds and you tend those seeds and you make sure that they become the best and healthy seeds. You give them everything you can so when they bloom, you can harvest them. That's what it means. Aligning yourself with the natural universal flow, understanding what that is, taking time to understand what is the universal flow, right? What is that? What is this system that God has created for us, right? So it also means that when your intentions support your highest good and the good of others, not just yourself, because we understand that we function within a larger system. So when your intentions are for the good of you and others, the universe will work to your benefit. It will make sure that you are successful. I had this conversation with a friend the other day trying to help them understand as we're growing stuff organically, we'll connect with more people who are in the same space that's growing organically, and we can come together to become each other's support system, right? Because we're working in the good for ourselves and the good for others. So the universe will work with us to make sure we get that because we're trying to supply for everyone, right? Also, something that winds up being crazy, because I wrote this down specifically and I put like 10 lines up on it, is acting in integrity brings synchronicity and ease. Integrity is probably the word for me this year. What that means, and it's wild. Speaking of that universal flow last year, my homeboy laid the foundation for this integrity. He gave us this story about him recognizing his integrity, and that story put me in a space where I was able to forgive in a lot of different ways because integrity is important. Functioning in a way that has integrity, that means being a person of your word. That is being a supportive person. That is being an authentic you, right? Integrity, I put those extra lines on there because I thought specifically about relationships. Something that I never really looked for was integrity. I would accept people without integrity because I wasn't looking for integrity, right? You can be a person. I was so understanding that we as humans make mistakes, that even when people do certain things that make you question their integrity, is that a good thing to do? You brush it off as mistakes because you're not looking, you didn't give it the right label. I said this same thing with safe. Safe became my word the first year we started this family because I had never really looked for safe as a prioritization in relationships. So understanding that acting in integrity, having some integrity about yourself will bring the synchronicity that you need and the ease in your life. That is, be honest and truthful with yourself first, and then extend that to others. Not the idea of who we want to be, but the truth of who we actually are, right? Now, the other thing I want to say that makes this important is forcing, manipulating, or working against your values create the blocks and the barriers that keep us from that. For example, empathy and trust. If we function with integrity in empathy and trust, remember, trust is to be given, not earned. If we function in that, it winds up bringing the synchronicity and the ease of life that we want to, right? And most of us think that by saying something with what you struggle with. Which one you struggle with? By saying stuff like trust is to be earned, we really think that we are protecting ourselves. But what we are telling the universe is we don't have trust. We don't trust our spirit. We don't trust our emotions. We don't trust the universe. We don't trust in God. So we have to build this barrier. Not even a boundary. It becomes a literal wall that we build by experience that we already created with our own energy. We think that we are protecting ourselves, but what we are doing is creating the resistance that we oh so wish that we didn't have. Hey, doo. So I'm trying something a little new, family. Safe relationships is big, right? And I don't know if you were here when we got to this word safe. We do a whole little exercise to figure out the words, our relationship words that we're gonna rebuild relationship with, right? So when it came to me, it really was a friend asking me. They said, "Hey, do you feel safe with me?" And my response was amazing. I literally laughed. Ha ha ha. I said, I don't feel safe with no woman. And when I said that, I paused. I was like, yo, did you hear what you said? Did you hear what you said? You said you don't feel safe with any woman. So that means when I was out here dating, I very rarely found safe places because I was vibrating on an understanding that I can't feel safe with women, right? But I recognize that women do have created safe spaces for me. So that cannot be necessarily true, that I don't feel safe. So what is the real issue here, right? So what wound up being the real issue is safety was not anything that I required in a relationship. I required a lot of different things. But when somebody asked me, what do you want from a relationship? Safe was not one of the words. So I say that to you because you may have a similar process to me. And safe may not have been one of the things that we prioritize. We prioritize communication. We prioritize support. We prioritize love. We prioritize a lot of things in relationships. But if you don't specifically say that word safe, remember, we're giving messages through the breath of life. So if we don't prioritize that word safe, how do we expect to get that? Right? So I say that you recognize that. That's a great recognition. I mean, that's great that you recognize that. But I also want to remind you that everything you need resides right in you. So now that you understand that, I bet life and experiences have taught you that that is valuable to you. And I know that going forward, any relationship that you have, safety will be one of the words, right? Okay. So the next law in the law of attraction is the law of right action. The law of right action. What does that mean? That means your behavior shapes your results. See, we're breaking it down now. We went from my thought process. Listen, I know you are. I said that specifically to you, that I know going forward in any relationship that you look for that, because you move in an energy now that safety is important and is valuable. You even reconnect with people who create safe spaces for you. You give shout outs with safe spaces. You have become a safe space for other people. So I know your attraction power is kicking in and ensuring that when these opportunities come, you will choose the one that supports the authentic version of you. And the authentic version of you is safe, right? So the law of right action, that is, your behaviors shape your results. What does that mean? What is your motivation? Is your motivation built on positivity or is it built on negativity? Are you asking for abundance because you're afraid of scarcity? Are you asking for love because you're afraid to be alone? What is the foundation of your motivation? What makes you do what you do? And that is a real conversation you must have with yourself and be true to yourself. What is your real motivation? Right? And I see people a lot of times, like specifically in dating and relationships, they will say that they want this type of relationship. But you can tell that their motivation is very interesting. And as a matter of fact, one of the topics that always makes you question motivations is that idea of 50-50. I don't care what side of the idea of 50-50 you reside on. Both sides have interesting motivations at times. Right? So, is your behaviors built on positive or negative motivation, right? So to put that into actual action in your life, that's simply treat people well and your opportunities expand, right? But again, we always start with self. So we treat ourselves well. We function in integrity. We love ourselves. We show gratitude. We are thankful for the abundance we already have. We start with self, and that self radiates out, right? So it's simple as treat people well and watch your opportunities expand. Your reputation, your name will precede you before you come. Every time. Works like clockwork, I promise you. Right. So the last of the 7 laws of attraction is the law of expanding influence, which is simply what I just said. You treat yourself well first, and that expands out to the universe around you and your attraction power. So it simply is understanding that your energy affects everything around it too. Everything around you. Your opportunities, your relationships, and the environments that you live in or place yourself in. Your energy affects that, right? So if you look at your life and you're wondering about some aspect of your life, whatever that aspect may be, the question turns back to you. And you ask yourself, what energy am I carrying into this situation? And energy can be simple as expectations. And that idea of having no expectations is very dangerous as well. It is not a solution. It is a new problem. So expectations winds up being the energy that you carry into this relationship or carry into the environments that you go in. So if you going into an environment, no lie, I just seen this dude tell this, what's some of the places you don't want to go in Charlotte, you don't want to be in, right? And he said one thing that I thought was 100% true. If you from Charlotte or you not from Charlotte, wherever you from, you understand that there's this thing called after sets, after parties. When everything closed down, you in some hole in the wall somewhere, and the party's still going on, right? And he was saying, you got to know where you're going. That is the truth, right? So even in the energy, so if you're going into this environment thinking that I'm going to be safe, guess what you'll choose? Safe environments. You won't go into environment, as soon as you cross the threshold or you get within 50 meters of that place, your energy will change. You'll start thinking, your body will start responding like, is this safe? Right? Or if you think you're going into dangerous environments, that your energy will change how you approach that environment, right? How you interact that environment, how people receive you and how you receive people, right? So in the law of expanding influence, we can raise our vibrations. That's our thoughts, behaviors, emotions, and feelings to watch our influence grow, right? So one thing we talk about healing all the time, right? But essentially what that is raising our vibration. We're making sure that we're functioning at our higher self, right? That's our thoughts, behaviors, and emotions, and our influence grows, right? Sometimes I'm still amazed at how people tell me I've affected their life, even from doing this show, right? And these are people that I would never know have even watched the show until they say something very specific. It's like, yeah, I seen that on your show. What? Are you serious? I didn't even know you watch, right? But they do, right? Because this whole time we all have been working together to raise our thoughts, behaviors, and emotions so that we can be influential. We understand the power, the influence we have on our environment, so we raise them to a high level and it expands our influence on people, right? And that is simply understanding you attract more of what you want, and that affects your needs, right? Growth leads to growth. We grow together, so we create a foundation or a space or a platform where growth is the expectation. So anybody that joins us or anybody that connects with you will appreciate and value growth, because that's the influence you have on them, right? Somebody told me the other day, like, man, you learning so much stuff. And I love it. Our minds are growing. Our mental are growing. Our spirits are growing. Our emotions are growing. And we talk a lot about our physical bodies too. So what are the implications of the law of attraction, right? Again, that's understanding. One, the implication of the law of attraction is you attract what you believe you deserve. So if you're getting it, and specifically not just that you attract it, because the light attracts all types of bugs, right? But specifically, why are you choosing that? Your choices are direct reflections on what you think you deserve, good, bad, or indifferent, right? As much as you try to say that I deserve better, are you choosing better, right? So that's understanding. The implication is that you attract what you believe, not what you deserve, right? That means people with strong self-worth, people with confidence naturally set healthy boundaries that they really don't require them to enforce or choose. All right? I mean, that don't require them to enforce. They choose healthier partners and communicate more effectively, right? That's just people with self-worth. And one of the reasons they don't have to... What? You and Kat having an impromptu battle? Who done fell through the old boy done fell through. All right. We'll be off in a little bit and we'll join you over there. I give the shout out to everybody. So I'll see you in a few. So thank you again, as always. Liberty. Right. So one of the reasons they don't have to enforce these boundaries, because their energy enforces them already. You want to believe me? Have you ever been around a pastor? Just being in his energy. Not even the pastor. You can be around his wife, the first lady. There are certain things that you are not going to do that you do every single day when they're not around, right? because their energy lays the foundation for what is to be expected, not just the title, but the energy, right? So that's why they don't have to enforce these barriers, these boundaries that many of us have to enforce. The reason why we have to enforce boundaries is because we're not living in our truth. So we have to speak this. We have to tell people this. People, as a matter of fact, I've had people say to me immediately, I don't know if I can date you because I can't be no pastor's wife. Or even though I ain't a pastor, they feel like functioning with me will be akin to that, right? Or I've even had people say, I can't date you because you too disciplined. That discipline radiates from me, right? So people understand that functioning with me, there's going to be a certain level of discipline. We're going to have to get together and have some, because that's how I live my life every day. I embody that. Even though I'm not disciplined in everything, discipline is embodied in my life, right? So the opposite of people with their strong self-worth, and the perfect example is people, if you think love is unsafe, which is one of the words that we just talked about. And it's wild because I just said how I never really looked for safe. So then I definitely thought that love was unsafe. And I attracted emotionally unavailable people. My thought process, the energy that I thought, whether it was conscious or unconscious, I still carried that thought. So what I wound up doing is attracting emotionally unavailable people, right? And when I noticed that, I had to be honest with myself. There are parts of me that are very emotionally unavailable. That's why I keep choosing these people because I am not emotionally available in the way that I claim to be or want to be, right? It's also, if you think that you are worthy of respect or affection, that's what you get. And as I said, you have to get to the core of your thoughts, because if you aren't getting that, that's a disconnection somewhere. So there are people who think and will verbally say certain things, right? But you can tell by their behaviors or their choices and the way that their life reflects to them, that that's not really what they believe, right? And they have to get in a space to allow people to pour into them, but more specifically, them to pour in themselves, to wash away those old boundaries, those old barriers. That's not even a boundary. That's a barrier that kept us from what we really deserved in life, right? So if you're not spending that time to get to the core of your ideas, like I just used the example of safe, my friend just asked me a question and my response was so telling that I really had to take time to get to the core of why I said that. Why did I say I never feel safe? Or when it came to forgiveness, why do I feel weak when it comes to forgiveness? It's the vulnerability. You spending time thinking about yourself, thinking about your behaviors, praying, meditating, doing what is necessary so you can get to the core. Getting to the core is bringing into consciousness what was once unconscious. And again, we understand that 90% of our behavior is based on conscious thoughts. So regardless of what you're saying in your conscious mind, your unconscious is at the driving wheel of the car, is at the wheel of the car, right? The next implication is your emotional state influence relationship dynamics. So I don't want to say happy, because we talked about the happiness paradox. Those people who chase happiness are the least happy, right? So content is very good. Understand. So that means how your emotional state influence your relationship dynamics. Contentment is the word we're looking for. But your dominant emotional state shapes how you behave interpret others, and how they respond to you. The example I used that we talked about earlier is that trust is earned. You send the message to the universe, to the energy, to God, that you are not trustworthy. The reason you don't trust, or the reason trust is hard for you to do, is because you don't trust yourself. You don't trust your judgment. You don't trust your behaviors. You have allowed past experience to become the whole of your identity, right? So we don't do that. Or even in a healthy relationship, your emotional state affects the bond. So if you feel safe, if you feel heard, if you feel valued, if you do those things for yourself, it affects the bond that you have in your relationships. Then the people that you're dealing with can feel safe. They can feel valued. They can feel heard, and in turn create that same space for you, right? So whether it's good or bad, we affect both, right? The third implication is like attracts like, right? People with similar emotional frequencies gravitate to one another. So as much as we don't like to say that some of the relationships that we've had are reflections of how we feel about ourselves, we are attracted to these people. We are connected to these people because we vibrate on the same frequency. They see you. Right? Sometimes we wonder why we're not seen, or we can't be seen when we're out in this world, but it's because we're not vibrating on a frequency for people to see us. But those who are vibrating on our frequency will always see us and find us. So people with similar emotional frequencies always gravitate towards each other. We always say we cut from the same cloth. Like-minded individuals. We have a lot of statements and cliche things that we say that solidifies this idea, right? Opposites attract, but likes stay together. That's the rest. That's how we do it, right? Emotionally mature attracts emotionally mature people. So if you want emotional integrity, emotional intelligence, all the emotional things that you think, you have to be that within yourself first, right? And then once you become that, you'll attract people who resonate on that same thing for you, right? People stuck in cycles of chaos, abandonment, or insecurity connect with people stuck in those same cycles, right? And if you're wondering if you are stuck in those cycles, or if you have been in those cycles, just look at your relationships. What have you said about your partners? Have you pointed out their abandonment issues? Right? We say this all the time, game recognize game. One of the reasons that we can see it so vividly is because it already resides in us. Game recognize game. Doesn't matter what game's being played. If you can play the game, you recognize somebody else playing the game. I wrote down this full of shit example, and I gave this before. We've talked about this several times before too. One of my Reiki sessions, I was talking to somebody, and one of the things that they came up with is, why do they always run into these people that's full of shit? And I help them to get to the conclusion. The only people that can deal with people that are full of it are other people that are full of it. So the reason why you keep running into these people is because you are those people. Because anybody that's not full of it can't deal with that. You don't keep them long. You know what I mean? So if you keep running into it, you keep having these incidents or these incidents where you're interacting with people who are full of it, it's time to start with the men in the mirror, right? Next implication is your expectation becomes relationship patterns. That's one of the reasons why that idea of no expectations is so dangerous, because if you have no expectations, what type of relationship patterns are you creating or following, right? You have no boundaries for yourself, no barriers for yourself. You need to have expectations, right? That is, understand that what you anticipate shapes what you experience, right? So if you anticipate a person, especially how this conversation about men and women, or men against women, women against men, or however, we wind up creating the self-fulfilling prophecies about these relationships because we expect them to behave in that way, right? So if I, as a man, am expecting my woman to be emotional, which is code for a lack of emotional control a lot of times, that means they behave in that way. My expectations create an environment where that matches my experiences, right? But if I think that my woman is going to be emotional intelligent or have the emotional control that I so like, then I create a space for her to be able to exhibit that and work on those skills so we can navigate that together. If you think about rejection, if you are expecting rejection, then your behaviors will wind up being you hesitant, or you might become very defensive in actions and not just words, right? One of the things, I had a disconnect with a friend recently, and it's around this. They were so worried about rejection that the only way that our relationship could continue is if I rejected them. All their behaviors responded to an anticipated rejection, even when the actuality of what is happening is not true. They would be worried about me rejecting them while they're sitting right beside me. I'm like, listen, if I reject you, you wouldn't be here. But their behaviors mimic that fear of rejection, that the only way that our relationship could continue is if I gave them the rejection that they wanted, right? If you fear betrayal, if betrayal is the thing that you're dealing with, you wind up becoming hyper vigilant. Hyper vigilant. You be looking for betrayal. Those are the people who are looking through your phone. Those are the people who are looking through your email. Those are those people, because they are worried about betrayal. Betrayal becomes their focus. I remember my homeboy when he first started truck driving. He said he was on the CB and they were having conversations, and all the truck drivers were talking about, do you worry about your woman cheating on you while you on the road? Now, does that happen? Yes, right? But the thing that stuck out is he said, one dude said, if you worried about that, you're already lost. That means you're creating the foundation for it to happen, because that's the energy that you're projecting to your relationship and your woman, right? So then she'll start looking at you like, hey, if you keep thinking this about me, maybe you're the one doing it. And there completes the cycle, right? There goes the self-fulfilling prophecy, right? If you believe in love and connection, you behave in an open way that fosters that connection. Vulnerability becomes a space for strength for you. So then other people feel safe because you are modeling safe behaviors of vulnerability. So other people begin to feel safe and vulnerable with you. We do this all the time when we do those live energy readings. Again, I forgot to give a shout out for live energy reading. But when we do those live energy readings, that is me asking people to be vulnerable. And the reason why people do it is because they watch the show or they talk to me and they understand that I am vulnerable first. There's nothing that I'd ask of them to share that I haven't shared myself. And even some of the things that I have shared, I still ask their permission or acknowledge that they may not be in a space to share that too, right? Next implication is the law of attraction encourages responsibility, not blame. Again, we stop looking outward. We stop pointing at people. We stop saying that that's the issue, and we start looking within ourselves. We take responsibility for our actions and our behaviors. What in me is creating a space that this is the outcomes that I receive? What in me? It's about responsibility and not blame, right? That's that idea when you pointing at one person, you got three fingers pointing back at you, because the responsibility resides in you. You cannot control someone else's behavior, but what in you is not only attracting this, but choosing this, right? This understanding that the law of attraction brings about responsibility, it helps you to increase your self-awareness. That self-awareness is knowing the truth about who you really are and what you really feel. For example, if you say stuff like, they always hurt me, who is they? Understanding the law of attraction will ask, what belief or fear am I repeating? If they always hurt you, you are the start of the cycle. So what belief or fear are you repeating? Hold on. Do 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 do. All right, we trying something else. If you're, hold on. If you saying stuff like, I can't find good people, then the question you need to ask yourself is, how do I increase my own emotional alignment? Because if you're actually good people, you won't have a problem finding good people. Y'all will vibrate and resonate on the same level that you'll be naturally attracted to yourself. They'll be naturally attracted to you because you are functioning as a good person. They see the good in you. They give the benefit of the doubt to you because that's what you're giving to them. That is what you're projecting out into the world, right? The next implication is your emotions can influence it. You can influence a relationship by shifting your energy, right? So if you become calmer, that lays the foundation for your relationships to be calmer. If you become more secure, that lays a foundation for your relationships to be less reactive and more secure. If people know that forgiveness is a healthy tool that you use, they'll be more open to be honest and vulnerable with you, because when they make that mistake, they understand that you will be there to give them forgiveness, right? And understanding, right? The next implication is the law of attraction. Because of that responsibility, it moves from blame to responsibility. It puts us in a space to be able to call in to healthy partners, because we've aligned our inner with the qualities we desire. So then we attract people that match those qualities. That means we become the embodiment of these words, of these relationships. We don't just say that I desire safety, but we become the living word. We become a safe space. If loyalty is something that you want, then we first start with cultivating that within ourselves. That stems from that idea of integrity. We keep the word to ourselves. We be loyal to ourselves. If we actually are lovers, we don't allow past experience, we don't allow fear to move us from that space. We become loyal to ourselves. I'll tell anybody, somebody asked me, how fast do you fall in love? And I'll tell you, does yesterday count? I'm loyal to myself. I know I call it any day. I say a sucker for love. I love love. And that's not going to change. By no experiences, I'm not going to allow those things to reshape who God intended me to be, right? Next, the law of attraction encourages personal growth as a foundation of love, right? What does that mean? As we grow, we understand we move to our most magnetic organ, which is our heart, and heart is the center for our love. As we grow, that growth, that changing, that evolving shows, it creates a foundation of love for self. We start with ourselves. I deserve to be the best version of myself. I love myself enough to take these steps, to make these changes, to be this person. So then we wind up creating the foundation of love, right? That's what love is, right? And then the relationships that we attract, again, I've said this, they are the mirrors, right, of the relationship you have with yourself. Now, the funny thing about this, we talk about this all the time, they mirror the past, present, and the future. Sometimes these relationships show you where you've been, where you are, or where you're going. And you have to take the time to figure that out. I've talked to people and I've heard them say things that I used to think. And I'd sit there and be like, man, I used to think that too. Did I sound like that? Yes, you did. Now that you've gone beyond that, you need to be able to see, growth can be measured as well, right? So the way that you see intangible things like emotional growth is you have to see people or interact with people or have incidences that show you where you used to think. Or you look at these new experiences and think about how you used to behave, right? So it encourages personal growth as a foundation because relationships become the mirror of our past, present, and future, right? Now, how is this applicable to my life, right? First, we understand you don't attract things by wishing. You attract them through your inner being, your focus, and how you show up for yourself and others. Integrity. How you show up for yourself and how you show up for others is integrity, right? How else is it applicable? Your mind state shapes your outcomes, right? Whatever you consistently think about, talk about, and or expect tends to materialize in your life. It becomes your life experiences. That's the energetic, your thoughts become the energetic blueprint of the life you experiences, right? So if you expect things to work out, you behave in ways that reinforce that expectation, and then you get more opportunities for success, right? Next, how it's applicable to your life is understanding again that your emotional state influences what you experience. That means how you perceive situations. Remember, we talked about perception winds up being the tools that we keep sharpening. The more perspectives and perceptions that we have, the more tools that we have to be able to navigate the experiences that we have in our life. So how you perceive situations, your confidence, how people respond to you, and what you feel drawn to. So we keep talking about what we attract to us, but attraction is a two-way street. We're making sure we're also paying attention to what we are attracted to. And what we are attracted to is evident in our choices, right? And those choices support our thoughts. Regardless of what we think about them, if we think they aren't good reflections of what we think about ourselves, they support our thoughts, right? Also, your belief shapes your relationships because relationships are mirrors. We just talked about that, so we understand that. Next, how it's applicable to your life is understanding that your focus determines your direction. Again, that's what we talked about, that reticular activating system. And that's your brain filtering out what does not support what you think, right? That self-fulfilling prophecy, or even that cognitive dissonance. Those are the people that are consciously filtering out. But your brain does that unconsciously, right? You focus on the opportunity, then your brain will find more opportunities for you, right? You focus on the reasons why life is hard, then that's what you're going to spot. You're going to be focused on, you're going to be stuck in why life is hard, talking about why life is hard. Next, the application, how it's applicable to your life, is self-image. Create your reality. What you think about yourself. Are you safe? Are you worthy? Are you loved? Are you abundant? What you think about yourself, how you appreciate what's happening in your life now, creates the reality that you are. If you think you're a winner, you act like one. And it's funny because I always thought I was a winner. So I always acted like one. And people are not surprised by certain things that I win. It's like, I knew you was going to win. Even though sometimes I'm still surprised by winning. But I overall think I'm a winner. I've won enough. I've had enough experiences to support that. But we've learned that the reason I've had those experiences is because I went in with the expectation that I can win. So I behaved in a way that allowed me to win, and my brain filtered opportunities for me to win, right? Also, we want to understand that it influences our motivation and action. Attraction is not passive. We must understand that attraction is not passive. It is activated by aligned action, right? That's, again, attraction is not passive. It is activated by aligned action. That means being our authentic self and behaving in ways that support the positive outcomes we want in our life. Right? Next, okay. Attraction isn't passive. There we go. Lastly, and one of the more beneficial things about understanding this law is that it helps you to break old patterns, right? Because we're shifting our beliefs, we're shifting our emotions, and by doing that, we break the repeating patterns. We're not the same person that goes into those situations. Before, where we think we weren't worthy, now we going into these same situations as worthy, so we won't make the same decisions that we've done before, right? Not that we lose our old self. We drop pieces off that no longer suit who we are, and we keep the pieces that will still be beneficial as we go forward, right? So we shifting our beliefs, our emotions, and we are breaking the cycles in our life, right? As we get better people, we get better treatment, we get better opportunities, and all that gives us better outcomes, family. And that right there is the law of attraction, right? So as you think about it, if you got any questions, don't hesitate to ask your questions, send them out. Make sure you can inbox me, you can do whatever. You can leave comments, but make sure you get in a space where you can ask questions if you want further understanding of the law of attraction. We can work on that together, or you find that safe space that allows you to be able to work on that, right? Next week, okay, so you can catch us Thursday, book club. We're starting a new book this week. I think we're going to do Changeling. Not I think. More than likely we're doing Changeling because I want to know what happens to the rest of the story. The rest of the story. So Apple TV created a show called Changeling, but they only got one season. and the end of the season is a cliffhanger, and they don't know if they're going to make a second season. So we have to finish the book so we can know what happens. I'm so curious. So you can catch us Thursday as we start a new book club, Changeling, by Victor LaValle. If not, you come back next Tuesday, and we will begin the fifth law, the law of inspired action, right? That's what the next thing that we'll talk about in our 12 universal laws. Again, this week we're working on our throat, and I want you to remember that you speak and hear truth. You communicate honestly. You live an authentic life. You are fearless and free, and you trust what you have to say. I appreciate you, family. I thank you for your time. If you're on TikTok, go over there, support one of the Soul Family, Cat's Kitchen. She's having a virtual versus. She generally has a versus every Thursday and Friday. So if you like that type of dynamic of versus, or you'd like to participate, you send her an inbox. But you catch her on TikTok to support the Soul Family as they do their versus. Her and Liberty are going head to head tonight. So again, I thank you for your time. I thank you for your support, and I appreciate you. And much gratitude, family. Peace.